Welcome back to Tarot by the Bay. I'm David. Okay. During the third night of the DNC, when Tim Walz was giving his talk, he was talking about the difficulty he and his wife had in having children. And they used IVF or some fertility treatment to have their daughter Hope and their son Gus. And it was a very emotional moment as he's speaking, and the cameras pan over to his daughter Hope, and she's barely holding it together from my observation. And as I'm thinking that, or Michelle might have been there, I might have said it to her, they pan the camera over to Gus, and he's openly sobbing. Now, what I did not know at the time was that Gus had autism. He's neurodivergent, and one of his conditions is that he does not control his emotions well. In other words, he has no filter. He has very little filter. So for many people, hearing their dad tell them how much they love them and how special they are to them, it could work them up inside, but they could keep that inside because society kind of frowns sometimes if you're openly sobbing. But Gus can't do that. Now, as an empathetic person like myself, I might have been crying along with Gus as I saw him in there. And in that emotional moment, I just had this really strong negative feeling of, you better effing not. And I believe I said it out loud to the point where Michelle was asking, what are you talking about? Because the minute I saw that, I knew there would be trolls. And I knew the trolls would go after him for that vulnerability. Again, not knowing that he's autistic or neurodivergent and has these issues. Just to me, this is a son that absolutely is, having an emotional moment. And the trolls don't like that. They don't like emotions. They find them to be weak and as they view them as a sign of weakness. Well, it didn't take long for the trolls to come out in the form of Ann Coulter. And she posted up something on Twitter saying, weird. Well, somebody else on Twitter posted a picture of a young man crying. He was roughly 17 to 18 years old. He had dark hair. He was wearing a blue suit jacket and a blue tie with a white shirt underneath. And he was crying too. Eyes scrunched tight, lower lip down. It was Kyle Rittenhouse. And the caption Ann Coulter said, I want him as my president. Now, I just want to throw one thing aside because I don't want this to be a Kyle Rittenhouse video. I did look. I went to YouTube and I watched the Kyle Rittenhouse testimony that led to that picture. Because I know I've read a lot of stuff saying he was faking it. He wasn't faking it. I watched the video. I watched the questioning. I watched how the buildup happened. Because I need to see that to get a better picture of what's going on. No, those were real. To me, it looked like he was having a panic attack and suffering some kind of trauma or reliving some kind of trauma. Now, we can argue the wisdom of putting probably an emotionally immature 17-year-old in a riot situation, give him a gun and tell him that and allow him to protect property. He didn't have the emotional maturity to be there. That's negligence on the parents. And 2 people lost their lives for that, and a 3rd person was shot for that. And I'll leave it at that. But if you don't believe me, just look up Kyle Rittenhouse crying. Go to YouTube. You'll see a 2-minute clip of his testimony. He wasn't faking it. He was actually suffering through a trauma. Now, we can argue after that, but he wasn't faking it, okay? Just take my word on it. If you don't want to take my word on it, you don't have to. Look it up. Okay, bringing it back to this. So Ann Coulter was called out on that. So here's your first troll. Now, where it gets interesting is Jeremy London. Who's he? He's an actor. He was in Mallrats, Kevin Smith movie Mallrats, amongst other things. And he was discussing how his grandson, it also has autism and is nonverbal. And he was saying how this baby, his grandchild, means the world to him. And seeing Gus Walz up there gives him hope that this child that he loves so much can grow up to be, he can grow up and have a life, maybe even something approximating a normal life. But At the same time, he also said that as he was sharing this video, he's saying, I don't know why I'm actually filming this, but that he knew that there were people out there that are horrible. And he saw the Gus Walz thing. And he felt for Gus Walz, and he felt for Tim Walz, because he can make that same connection because he has it with his grandson. And he knew there would be trolls out there. And his basic message was, I'm telling you right now, if anybody says anything mean about Gus, I'm not going to be nice anymore. And he was talking about it's a part of his personality that that exists. People don't see it. He doesn't want to actually bring it out, but it's there, and he's not sure how he's going to keep it contained. He ended his message by saying that Gus is a special kid, Tim Walz is a special man, so get out and to the ballot box and vote. To him, it's personal. So, where am I going with all this? I want to read on Gus Walz's open show of emotions and the impact it's going to have on the collective and the impact it's going to have on the votes. It was a very touching moment, a very emotional moment. Okay. I've talked long enough. How about some cards getting down here? Entertainment purposes only. Gus Walz's emotional display that we all saw. How's that going to affect the collective? What we have here on the foundation of the reading is the Two of Cups. People coming together. In some ways, where Trump has tried to put it as like a poison to divide people, Tim Walz's son has a way of uniting people, much like the Olympics can unite people. A tragedy can unite people. In this emotional moment, a father's love for their son and the son's love for their father, that moves past political boundaries and gets down to the core humanity, which is where we need to find ourselves. Crossed with the Knight of Cups. The cups, this thing has been poisoning these cups for a long time, and somebody new was coming along to offer a different cup, something that is more core than this superficial. It drives down to the connection we have. Underneath it all is the star, the calm after the storm. Generally considered the most beautiful card, the most wonderful card here. This is that card of hope in bringing things together, that we can put down the divisions as we find our core humanity, and helps us unite. In the past, we have the King of Swords. I think of the swords of Damocles with this. The king has the sword hanging over him. Actually, no, that's not the right analogy. King Solomon? I think it was King Solomon. The one that was going to split the child in half with his sword. Two women fighting over the child, both claiming to be the mother or something along those lines, if I remember my parables correctly. So when King Solomon says he's going to... Oh, let's look it up, David, shall we? What is it? Ah! My memory still works. I don't have COVID fog brain. It was King Solomon. Chopping a baby in half because two women were claiming to be the mother. And one woman says the other woman could have the child. And the other woman was gleeful that she was going to have the baby. And King Solomon gave the child to the woman who said, don't chop the baby in half, because only the mother would be concerned about the son's life and would rather have, or should I say the child's life, the child with live, as opposed to letting the ego go through and killing it. We've been divided as a country. Some of us have willingly accepted it, others, it was kind of forced, but there was that division there. And it's Gus Walz's emotional display cuts to the core that we're all humans here, living this on the same planet, having the same spiritual journeys. We're on a spiritual journey, different journeys, but we're all on this planet together. Here we go with the world card. We're all on this planet together. We're all trying to do our spiritual journeys and do our spiritual growth together. It's much easier to grow when you're united as a people, not territorial. This is getting rid of fear of the stranger. This is one small blue marble in a giant universe, and we're all people living on it. We're all humans. We have different eye color, different hair color, different skin color, different cultures, but it's funny how the values are very similar through all these things. And through that genuine emotional display, that emotional vulnerability, divine feminine, if you will, it will bring things together. I do believe that I had a podcast that I did with Dave Johnson a few months ago on his channel, Moonride. And we talked about this. And I talked about the divine feminine, and that it seems to me that, like when I've taken my massage classes, that there were a lot of members of the gay community in it, much more so than I would normally see in the general population. And with intuitives, a lot of the men that are do channeling or do tarot reading, I think, again, the number of gay men that do that is much higher than I would see in the normal population. And I've thought about that for a while. And to me, in order to really be intuitive, you have to be in touch with your feminine side. You have to be in touch with the divine feminine. Women, obviously, or maybe not obviously, generally speaking, are much easier. It's a much easier, not as big a leap for them to be in touch with the divine feminine. For guys, it's a little bit of a longer jump. And it allows for that empathy. It allows for that connection with the spirit and source. And I think Gus's emotions right there are helping us remember where we're from and why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing. Back this up. Overarching energy is the Two of Swords. It's a choice. It's a crossroads. Where are we going to go with this? We always have choices when we're on our spiritual journey. And those choices have pros and cons with both choices that you can do. You can go the path of toxic masculinity, or you can go the path of divine feminine. They have their advantages on the short term and on the long term. They have their shortcomings on the short term and long term. The lesson to be learned with Gus's emotions here is the Four of Swords. The calming down, the tranquility of it. One of the things I really wanted to come across with all this is that parties on both sides love their kids, generally speaking. And you can have as much toxic masculinity as you want, but that toxic masculinity often is hiding something very sensitive inside that doesn't want to get hurt. Gus's ability to cry publicly shows a strength that exceeds the fear of being hurt. It's the strength of appreciation and showing that love back through emotions, even if he has a hard time controlling them. It gets buried in some folks. But that doesn't mean they're not there. And in the end, you should be thinking about what you're saying, thinking about what you're doing and the impacts. When you're making your decisions, there's consequences. You should sit and think about those things before you chop the baby in half. The outcome is the Five of Cups. Instead of looking at this as disappointment, which is the general reading on it, look at all these cup cards here that we've got coming on. 1, 2, 3 of them now. Sometimes we keep our emotions behind us. Sometimes we let them spill out for everybody to see. We can't fully express all of our emotions outward. You need that balance with your emotions. Otherwise, it's too overwhelming for people. That's why you have a balance in there. With Gus Walz, I think it's showing that it's okay to do that. It's refreshing to see it. You don't have to do it all the time. You can keep 2 of them behind you, but it's okay to start expressing more. Will there be trolls out there? Of course there will be. Why? Because maybe they haven't felt love in a long time. And they needed that message. They mock what they fear. And they fear that vulnerability. And what I've seen a lot of times with toxic masculinity is that it's vulnerable. It's a vulnerability that folks don't want out there. So they overcompensate with hypermasculinity. Ann Coulter, she probably had a miserable childhood with unloving parents. She probably has all sorts of daddy issues. I'm not here to psychologically analyze her, but it would be doesn't seem to me to be a big leap to get there. I would have hope that she would review her thoughts on things. I doubt it. I doubt she will. That makes her money. She's had too big a head start on that. But, some self-reflection on her part, that 4 of Swords, would go a long way for her to not come across as callous and a troll. Remember, in the end of the day, we're going to have our life reviews when we're all said and done, and you have to answer for what you did and why you did it. And your judge is going to be yourself, because you know when you're telling the truth and you know when you're making excuses. So, in the end, I think Gus Walz did us all a favor by showing those emotions. And I'm hoping between that and Kamala Harris and Tim Walz's message of hope for our country, we can move past all this anger and toxicity that we're suffering now. Okay? Thank you very much for watching this video. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.